Consolidated School District 89 Candidate Forum, sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Glen Ellyn. All candidates were invited to attend, but regrettably, candidate Juan Peralta failed to respond to the invitation by the designated deadline. And we were notified just this morning that Jessup McGee fell ill last night and is unable to attend. I am Brad Wyman's, a member of the League of Women Voters of Wheaton, and your moderator for today. I live in West Chicago, so I will not be voting for any of the candidates participating in the forum today. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that neither supports nor opposes candidates or parties for any office. The League is not affiliated with any political party. The League's purpose is to promote civic responsibility through the informed and active participation of citizens in government and civil civic discourse. Providing forums for voter education is a major mission of the League of Women Voters, so citizens can become better informed about the issues facing their community and to learn about the candidates running for office. The format for today is a candidate forum and not a debate. Candidates are expected to accurately represent the facts, and their responses reflect their own views and opinions and refrain from commenting on the views of other candidates. The League of Women Voters is not responsible for the accuracy of statements made by the candidates. It is the responsibility of community members, news media, and opposing candidates to fact-check statements made by the candidates. All candidates attending have signed and returned the ground rules to participate. These rules specify the format, time limits, broadcasting of the forum, and other rules related to the conduct of the forum. The candidates will begin in alphabetical order with their 1.5-minute opening statements. They will then alternate the order in which they answer questions for a maximum of 1.5 minutes. After the question portion of the forum, each candidate will give a 1-minute closing statement. Members of the League will act as timers, and I will enforce the time limits. Should a candidate exceed the time limit, I will ask you to finish your sentence and move on to the next candidate. We have received a large quantity of questions from the community in advance of today's forum. To ensure that questions represent a balance of topics, a panel of experienced members of the League of Women Voters have reviewed the questions submitted for appropriateness, applicability to all candidates, and to avoid duplication. You may submit questions during the forum, writing your questions legibly on the index cards provided, which volunteers will collect. We will do our best to read as many questions as possible within the time frame allotted. We are grateful to those of you in the community who have taken time to learn more about the candidates before casting your vote by attending and watching these candidate forums. For those in attendance today, we request that you do not take photos or video during the forum. It is a distraction to other members of the audience and to the candidates. Please listen attentively, turn off your phones and electronic devices, avoid commenting or disrupting others during the forum, and refrain from applause until the end of this forum. We are grateful to these candidates who are not only willing to serve in office, but who have agreed to come today to share your goals and positions. So let us begin with opening statements. Candidate Kogut, you have 1.5 minutes for your opening statement.
Good morning. First, let me start by thanking the...
Bring your microphone
Closer?
Yes.
Is this better?
Yeah.
Okay. Good morning. First, let me start by thanking the Glen Ellyn League of Women Voters for hosting this event. Although we will see some differences between candidates here at the table.
Excuse me, I'm going to ask you to tilt it up a little bit so those in the back can hear. There you go.
I think I might be too tall. Is that the problem? Okay, sorry.
We have to
Sorry
have a height
about
restriction for candidates.
Yeah. This is as tall as this mic gets. I was just going to say that I wanted to thank you for allowing us to come here. I believe that all the candidates at this table are really looking forward to sharing their perspectives in an open and honest way to inform our electorate. And I'm Yannick Koger, currently resident of Wheaton. I have lived in District 89 for 6 years. My wife Katie and I have 3 daughters in the district, and the school board unanimously appointed me in December of 2021. I'm one of 3 candidates that have been endorsed by the district's Education Association. The unique skills I bring to the board are largely influenced by my 15 years experience in the consulting, data, and analytics space. And I am currently a marketing science partner at Meta. As I conclude my intro to share why I'm here today, I consider public education an integral part of my personal success and wish to do my part to help all students attain that here in our district. I want to ensure our district remains a vibrant institution that prepares our students to become excellent high school students, future leaders, and caring global citizens.
We're going to take 30 seconds for a tech break.
Still not all though.
Candidate McGrane.
Thank you. I would like to second Mr. Koger's thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting us, as well as I think all the candidates up here are up here for the right reasons. I just think we come at things from a different perspective. My name is Kevin McGrane, and I'm running for the D89 school board position. I have 2 young daughters in 1st and 3rd grade, and my wife is a 4th grade classroom teacher in a neighboring district. So I have the utmost respect for what they do and how hard their job has become post-pandemic. Our daughter's education is our #1 priority, but I don't feel the district is heading in the right direction. When we moved here, 4 of our schools were rated exemplary, but today only 1 school retains that designation. The more I've learned from attending board meetings, talking to teachers, and interacting with the administration, I have real concerns that we could be doing things better. I previously served as a trustee on the Palatine Township Board, where we never raised taxes, balanced the budget, and enhanced services to the community. I'm an independent thinker who prefers to listen first but ask lots of questions so that our decisions are based on facts and in the best interest of the kids and staff. I've worked in sales at a Fortune 200 company for the last 17 years, where my job is to build new relationships and nurture existing ones, which I believe gives me a unique skill set to serve this community. Elections are referendums on incumbents. Unfortunately, we've had an administration that is antagonistic and dismissive to parents and ignores teachers and staff. It is imperative that we fix these broken relationships immediately, and we have the chance to do so with the new superintendent and new board members.
Thank you very much. Candidate Pope, your opening statement.
Hi, Scott Pope. I am a 2-term member of the District 89 board. I'm seeking my 3rd member. Like our other candidates, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for inviting us here, and I'd like to thank everybody here for showing up and really getting informed about what or who we are as candidates. My background is engineering. I have an electrical engineering degree and a master's of business administration. So when I look at a problem, I go to what is the problem and I try to find a solution. I'm not looking to bring partisan politics or any politics into the board. I want to look at every question, every issue that comes up to the board and say, how does this help our students? Because that is the #1 question I want to ask about every issue that comes up. And if I can't answer that it is helping our students, I won't move forward with it. So once again, like Kevin and Yannick said, I believe all 6 of us that are running are here for the students. And we have different opinions on how we get to those results to help our students. But I believe just looking at the data and looking at all the facts will lead us to the right decisions. Thank you.
And Candidate Wapesser, your opening statement.
Similar to the other 3, again, thank you for having us here. I'm Scott Walwieser. I've lived in Glen Ellyn for nearly 13 years, 11 of which have been in D89. My wife's been a teacher in the neighboring district as well for 20 years, and my twin daughters that are here go to Glencrest after their time at Parkview. I've been a head softball coach for them for 7 years and counting. I've volunteered at the Park District in many capacities, and have also participated in pretty much every activity possible at Parkview and that the schools have for parents. I'm here now because, similar to other community members, I've become somewhat frustrated in what appears to be an unwillingness for all of the current board to entertain parental or teacher concerns that don't always properly align with currently held agendas or beliefs. We've had teachers reach out to us on behavioral and academic concerns going unaddressed or worse, dismissed with an aura of stay in your lane. I've watched board members look out the window, play on their phones, and intentionally appear disinterested when community members speak. I don't expect us to agree with everything all the time, but we have to be able to have a conversation. I love our D89 teachers. I love the families in D89. There's a lot of good here, but that doesn't mean that we turn a blind eye to the issues that we know are present.
Thank you. The first question will start with candidate McCrane. What do you feel are the biggest challenges or opportunities the district has? What initiatives would you implement to address them?
Thank you. The biggest problem that I feel the district has is the inability that we've shown to not listen to our teachers. As some of you are aware, there is a DLC, a district leadership committee, and the teachers that came to us said, we no longer express feedback at that committee because we're not listened to. The administration does one thing and does not listen to teachers, does not take their recommendations. And so they've gone to where they just do what they can in their classrooms, and none of that feedback is getting back to make policy changes. So the first thing I would do is I would revitalize the DLC so that we have teachers that come to us that tell us what is going well, what is not going well, so that we can institute changes immediately. And there should never be repercussions to a teacher who expresses their viewpoint when they get back to their classroom by the administration. We will change that, and we will ensure that that never happens again.
Thank you. Candidate Pope?
So when we talk about opportunities and challenges, our biggest challenge going forward is we are hiring a new superintendent right now. So the board needs to make an effort with the superintendent and the Teachers Association to really rekindle the relationship that may have soured in recent years. I believe when we look at interviewing these candidates for superintendent, you know, it's imperative to focus on relationship building, and relationship building goes from board to administration to students to association. Those relationships are key. Other opportunities, you know, we did as a district, as a nation, see learning loss during the pandemic, and we need to address that, and we need to pinpoint those problems and find initiatives to address that. And you ask what initiatives. I'm a board member. I rely on my teachers and my administration to bring forth those initiatives. I look to them, I say, here's the problem, this is what we want to initiate. You as experts in your field, how do you want to solve this? So, thank you.
Candidate Walbesser, what do you feel are the biggest challenges or opportunities the district has? What initiatives would you implement to address them?
I think, as Mr. McGrain mentioned, one of the core things that we need to do from a challenge standpoint is make sure we're listening to all vested parties. Again, being married to a teacher for 20 years, something that should be readily apparent, but I don't know if it always is the fact that no matter how long we serve on the board, we're not the expert. The experts are in the classroom, and they can't be put in a position where if they bring a concern to bear, whether that be academic behavior or anywhere in between, that there might be some sort of repercussion that they have to face. I also agree with Mr. Pope. He brought up the learning loss that we've seen primarily due to the pandemic. I think that absolutely needs to be addressed, and I think one caveat there is a rising tide raises all ships, right? I think oftentimes we think we have to focus on this group or that group. We're in one of the most affluent communities in the United States of America. There's no reason that shouldn't be something that is handled across all spectrum of learners. From an opportunity standpoint, every challenge presents an opportunity, right? I think one of the biggest things that we can do is look at benchmarks on what other districts have done to be successful, what other organizations have done to be successful. My background is in data and analytics as well for the past 20 years, and I think you have to realize that pulling in more information, asking why. Why is it this way? Why is it this way? Could it be done different? These questions need to be consistently asked.
Thank you. And Candidate Coker?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. I think there are kind of three things that come to mind. Onboarding this new superintendent and establishing a great relationship between our teachers and a new superintendent. Some of the things that have been mentioned by other candidates is, you know, recent developments that have gotten to a boiling point. there's always opportunities to improve communication between administration and teachers, but it's also a two-way street. There's mechanisms in place for communication, such as DLC. If those things aren't working, let's diagnose what's wrong. How do we fix that problem? We can't come and say there are two parties that are communicating and then there's a breakdown and then not come to the table with solutions. I think one of the things that we also need to focus on is fiscal responsibility. We recently passed a referendum to improve the safety and infrastructure of our schools. So we need to responsibly spend the money and make sure that budgets come in on time and under budget. So when we do these projects, we need to make sure that they're done well. And then the last piece, and it was kind of hinted at, is comprehensive student growth. We do have some academic achievement gaps with certain demographic groups. We need to figure out how we can better address those needs for the students that need it most. But it doesn't just focus on single academic lens. We need to think about personal as well and how we help the whole learner within our district.
Thank you. The next question will begin with candidate Pope. Specifically, what do you view as the role of the Board of Education member regarding the classroom curriculum, books, and other educational resources in the district schools? I'll read it one more time. Specifically, what do you view as the role of a Board of Education member regarding the classroom curriculum, books, and other educational resources in the district schools? Candidate Pope?
Yeah, like I said, I'm an engineer. I'm not an educator. My job with curriculum is to review it and see if it is age appropriate and appropriate for our students. I can't tell you, the best way to teach math. Not a math teacher. I know how I learned it when I was in college and in high school and in grade school. It's not the same way. It's been proven it wasn't necessarily the best way. Learning materials, same thing. I rely on our teachers. Our teachers are highly educated. They are some of the best teachers in the nation. They understand what our students need to learn. So I rely on them to provide appropriate learning materials and review them. If something comes up to us, yes, we'll review it and see if it meets community standards, but it's not our job to go in to look at every one of those pieces of learning material. And books. Books is a national thing. Banning books is, it's deplorable in mine. Every student needs to be able to look in a book and read about someone that's like them. Because that book is not like your student doesn't mean there's not another student in that classroom that can read that book and say, hey, that feels like me. And that's important. So, thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Waldesser. You have 1.5 minutes.
I think because we have the first name, Mr. Pope, I've been looking at my notes because I would probably echo a lot of the things he mentioned as well. With regards to the role of the board, it's obviously to improve the curriculum. As I mentioned before, being married to a teacher, I fully recognize that I'm not an expert, and that's the job of teachers. That's why we're promoting so much the need for transparency, for accountability, and for having their input be consistently used to choose that type of curriculum. When we get into books, I think oftentimes that's a premise that is intentionally misleading. I don't think there's anybody in this room that thinks children should be exposed to inappropriate books. I don't think there's anyone in this room that thinks books should be banned. I think it's trying to be used as a national level political cudgel on people, and it's again, you take a topic and you twist it on its head. I've talked to people where they brought this up on a one-on-one basis, and I say, well, of course not, and then the person comes back with, well, what about this? And I think what they oftentimes don't realize is when you would actually show the pictures of some of the issues or some of the books that people have talked about having removed, they don't even believe they're in the school because they're of a sexual nature and graphic manner for children. That's inappropriate. We can all agree on that. But when people say banning books, I don't know anyone here that wants to ban books.
Thank you.
Nor do I.
Thank you. Candidate Kova.
Yep. For me, I think when it comes to curriculum and books, as a board, we have policy that focuses on our approval of the materials, the books, and the educational services for students that come directly from the administration and teachers. They know what will work for their students. So we ultimately do have the approval at the board level, but we don't go into classrooms and figure out what works for students. We have to trust our administrators and teachers to do that for us. That being said, we need to regularly hear updates on curriculum. We can't just let it sit and become stale and or not meet the needs of our students. We need to regularly monitor whether or not curriculum is achieving its goal. And then I think lastly, we need to make sure it's dynamic in terms of meeting the needs of a 21st century education. I work in technology and see the things that are happening, and it is surprising how fast things can move. So, and lastly on books, I think it's very similar to what's been said. Do not believe in book banning. I believe in having a broad-based set of materials that can meet the needs of our diverse students. Not everyone is the same. They come at things from a different perspective. They need to see themselves in a book, and understand and build empathy for other people. You know, that's how students build understanding amongst each other. And I think we need to have as broad a set of materials as possible, as long as they're age appropriate, as deemed by the administration and teachers.
Thank you. Candidate McGrain.
Yeah, so I think it's the board's role to follow their own policies on passing curriculum, and they should be the final decision maker based on the formative vetting of a curriculum by the educators. It's not the board's role to do that. The board should also make sure that any curriculum passed meets the state standards. I believe we just passed a new ELA curriculum, and we also recently passed a math curriculum. So this is likely a non-issue for us in the next couple of years, but where the board should be involved is monitoring how is this curriculum working. We've been using an ELA curriculum by Fountas and Pinella for the last 2 or 3 years after it's been debunked. So we need to be using data to go back in and see how is this curriculum working, and if it's not working, or if we find out that there are issues with it, then we need to immediately round up teachers and administration to figure out how are we going to address it and how are we going to change it. As far as books go, I'll jump in real quick. I'd like to commend the current board. They actually have a phenomenal resource. You can go and look up every single book in our library. As far as I know, there has only been one complaint about a book that was potentially age inappropriate. The principal was alerted. The principal removed that book after reviewing it. So I find this to be mostly a non-issue, especially in K through 8. It hasn't been a problem in our district, and I think we can commend the board for making things very visible to parents that want to know what is in our library.
Thank you. The next question will begin with candidate Wellbesser. How should the school district support students who are underachieving academically?
I think, as I mentioned before, right, a rising tide raises all ships. So I think, number one, having a background in data and analytics, what we're looking at in whether you call it learning loss or test scores, you have to look at that in an aggregate and see where the trend line is, right? These are looking at vintages and looking at curves and where it's going, not just where it is today. That said, a student is not a number, right? I think there are other members up here as well that have mentioned that, you know, each student learns different. We need to make sure our teachers have the proper resources, because oftentimes you have one teacher, and if you don't have an additional aide, you're trying to teach to 24, 25, 26, 20 different types of learners, right? And that goes across the spectrum. As you talk to people in the community, there's obviously a focus that we need for those that have severe learning loss or need to be brought up. But then you also hear from members of the community, what about the kids in the middle? Are they being left behind at the expense of one over the other? The same thing with the high achievers. Is anyone here had to be in a position where you've had to fight to have your kids that are in that upper group still get the services they need as well? The point being is we need to make sure that this focus is across all students, not just one specific set, right? And again, we've mentioned it, not everybody learns the same, but we still have to look at data and understand where these trend lines are going.
Thank you. Candidate Kruger. How should the school district support students who are underachieving academically?
Yeah, so in our district, we have seen this historically, especially for our Black and Hispanic students, in terms of their math scores being below other demographics, and that's been fairly consistent for quite some time. One of the things that we've worked with is a universal design for a learning specialist to help all students. We've allocated funds to fund that position to help us understand how we can create curriculum and design instruction that serves different types of students. Is every student a visual learner? Is every student a auditory learner? A UDL specialist helps us understand how we can design instruction that helps all the students in there. So it is kind of to what Scott Walbeser's point was on improving overall instruction for everyone. I think another way that we do this is through multi-tiered systems of support, or also known as MTSS. What that means is you want your instruction to serve 85% of your students. You know, you want it to make sure that the core instruction does a great job of meeting the vast majority of needs. But then once you have additional learners that need more support, you know, you can filter them into reading specialists or other specialists that help support them. So we have a multi-layered approach, as well as the universal design for learning specialists that helps our entire district with these issues.
Thank you. Candidate McGreen.
I think we need a multi-pronged approach here, right? So the first thing is identifying which kids are not proficient, right? If we can't look at the Illinois report card and determine who's proficient and who's not, based on the numbers that they're coming back, as well as comparing to math scores, then it's hard to figure out who is falling behind. The next thing we need to figure out is why are they not proficient? Why are they falling behind? Similar to the curriculum, you know, I don't think you're going to get an answer from the board here as to how we best address these kids. That has to come from the teachers. Where we come in is when they come to us or the administration and say, this is what we need to get these kids back up to speed, we have to be supportive of that. Whether that's financially, whether that's with more aids, whatever it may be. You know, we know that kids who fall behind by third grade in ELA are going to start to have problems with math because they can't read the problems. So not only do we need to identify who's falling behind, but we need to attack it early. One of the issues with our district is we got fined a couple years ago because we had too many minority kids with IEPs. So it feels like the response to that has been to put a barrier in place so that we don't have as many kids on IEPs. I don't know how that services kids that are falling behind. You know, if we're going to get fined for trying to help out more kids, I'm perfectly fine with that. We need to address the kids who are falling behind. We need to do it immediately. And I think with the proper teacher support, that will happen and we will start to see scores increasing.
Thank you. Candidate Pope?
Yeah, so Candidate Koger mentioned MTSS, and a lot of us, that's a new acronym for us. So if we have older students, that's differentiation. So it's got a new name to it, but every teacher now has a documented support system to make that differentiation. So our main curriculum supports that middle 85%, and then we bring in differentiated learning for the lower, I guess, 7.5% and the upper 7.5%. But it's not just those 7.5%. So it supports the 85%, but there's the fringes that Candidate Walbeser mentioned too. In that middle, we're differentiating across the middle. And we need to continue to do that. But it's not always just academic either. We have to look at our emotional status of our students, because when a student comes into school and they're not in the right mind, they're not going to learn. So we don't know what's happening at their home. We don't know what's happening in their life outside of school unless we talk to them. And that's one of the initiatives the board just actually talked about this week, is bringing in more psychologists. So every school has a dedicated school psychologist to help our social workers to identify those issues so we can help them as a child whole, not just the educational portion. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Koger, we'll begin this question with you. Name one district initiative that is working well for our students and one that needs improvement.
I would say some of the things that I've seen work well for our district is our family liaison program. What that means is that we have family liaisons that serve as a bridge between students that come into our district that may come from a different background. Maybe they speak a different language, and English is not their primary first language. So we have people that serve our Hispanic community, our Black community, some speak Hindi. So those different liaisons have helped onboard families, help them navigate the system, get them off to a good start within our district. And that's somewhat of a unique position, but I think it's worked extremely well in helping bring our families up to speed more quickly within our district. Something that's a challenge. I think some of the challenges we do have, and I've mentioned it before, is making sure that our standardized test scores across all groups is commensurate. It is something that we've seen in strategic planning. It's taken some time to address, but MAP scores for certain demographics that are lower than others is something that I think our school district, with an immense amount of resources, caring teachers, wonderful teachers, as well as active parents, we should be able to address. So I think that's a challenge that we need to address.
Thank you. Candidate McGreen, name one district initiative that is working well for our students and one that needs improvement.
Yes, I'm actually going to name two real quick. So the first one is I like how the board has current students as board members. I think it's good to give the kids a voice. I'm glad that they've done that. And the other thing is I like the individual school relationship with parents, right? I participate in Watchdog Dad. I participate in Pancake Breakfast. I think the more that you can get parents involved in their kids' education, the better outcomes you will see for everybody. And so I'm glad that they do both of those. One of the things that's not working well is communication. And that goes from administration to teachers, administration to parents. There's been countless conversations that we've had with parents who have tried to address issues with the administration, and if they didn't like what they were hearing, they basically just rejected it. And we've heard the same argument or the same problem from teachers. So it's incumbent on the board to find those things out and create quick remedies to them before they create a toxic relationship with either parents and or teachers. So that'd be the one thing that I would want to fix it.
Candidate Pope.
Yeah, I would say an initiative that works well is our curriculum review. We've talked about curriculum up here, but in recent years we've updated our math curriculum and our ELA curriculum, and our teachers drive that. So we pilot different programs, and they go through and choose, and it becomes very evident when you talk to the teachers which curriculum they believe is working best for our students. And I'll say on top of that, when we look at our math curriculum, we looked at it and we were not supporting our students well. We had too many people that were not in advanced math and were not being challenged with the math curriculum. We fixed that. We moved people up, and we actually changed our math curriculum, and 6th grade became 7th grade, 7th grade became 8th grade, 8th grade became 9th grade curriculum. We moved literally every student up a grade because we recognized we weren't challenging them. And I agree with candidate McGrane. Community relations and outreach, not outrage. Outreach is somewhere where we need to work on. We recently started having community members come learn about different programs we have, but not a lot of people come. We have a few people come to them, and I have not been to one, but I hear it's great conversation in those meetings. We need more people. We need more people interested in our district and to learn all the different opportunities we have here at 89. Thank you.
And Candidate Wallace.
Yeah, I would echo what the other candidates have said up here as well. I am happy with the change in the ELA program, moving more towards a phonics-based platform. I think the individual one I would add is similar to what Mr. McGrane mentioned with regards to participation at the parent level. I think it's excellent that there are so many groups, clubs, and activities that our children have access to. So that way they can find a place where they're going to fit, right? Not everyone's going to want to do one sport or one instrument or music. There's quite a variety there. With regard to challenges, I think, we've seen a rise of behavioral issues, and I think we need to make sure that the communication back to the community, whether that's, teachers to board, board to community, parents to all of these various, interactions, we need to improve that level so that way people are understanding what's going on and where we have issues that we need to fix. And I think, again, to me, that's one of the bigger issues and why I'm actually here right now is because I don't believe that level of communication has been put in place, right? Mr. Pope mentioned there's newer forums right now for parents to interact with board teachers. Why hasn't that been around for, I don't know, the past 40 years? That would be my question.
Thank you. The next question is, what policies and practices would you either keep or change to ensure our schools are equitable and inclusive? And we'll begin with candidate McGrain. What policies and practices would you either keep or change to ensure our schools are equitable and inclusive?
So I think right off the bat, I don't think everyone's going to disagree that we need to have an inclusive community, right? So what does that mean? That means that we have a wide variety of people that have different beliefs, and everyone should feel included. We should attack bullying quickly, those sorts of things, right? So I don't think anyone's going to disagree there. On the equity side, I think it kind of depends what we mean by equity, right? 12% of our black learners and 18% are proficient in math and reading. So a huge population of them are not proficient. So we should be attacking that immediately and finding out what are the causes and how do we fix it. But it shouldn't just be by color, it should be by everyone that's falling behind. We did an equity audit. I tried to get my hands on it. I couldn't. I avoided it. I still couldn't. I had to go meet with the superintendent to finally discuss it. I said, well, okay, you got the results. What are we doing with them? What were the results? None of this was ever made public. She told me we may put some of it into policy, we may not. There was no specifics, right? So going back to the communication, if by equity we mean how do we get everyone to perform well and above standards, then yes, I'm 100% for it, and let's find out what's driving certain kids not to meet those thresholds. But I think in order to do so, we need a superintendent that is going to be honest and with the feedback from these types of assessments that we take.
Thank you. Candidate Pope, what policies and practices would you either keep or change to ensure our schools are equitable and inclusive?
So I believe our policies support equity and inclusivity in what we do. What practices, however, that could be different. So I think when we look at practices for equity, we need to look at the student, as I said, the student as a whole, the student's family as a whole. We need to support families and students to see where that loss or why they aren't performing. And I think when we look at students with IEPs or other plans out there, we need to be challenging them. We can't just congratulate them because they did the bare minimum. We need to move on and push them. A coach and a teacher push students, and we need to continue to do that. And as Senator Waldweiser said earlier, the rising tide does raise all ships, and challenging students across the board helps bring some of that equity to our schools. Thank you.
Candidate Waldweiser.
Yeah, I think both Mr. McGrain and Mr. Pope already hit on this. I have not seen anything in any of our schools where every person doesn't want all of our students to feel included, belong, and to your point, challenged, right? There's no one going around saying, well, I hope this kid or this group or whatever succeed or fails instead of succeeds, right? In terms of policies, I would go back again from a data standpoint to benchmarking. What have other districts done, right? Talk to some of the classroom teachers. What are best practices across other districts, other places, not only in our community, throughout the state, throughout the nation, when you have issues, right? what can we learn from people that have been in the position where we are in now, and they've taken that step to increase that level of learning, to make sure that those that might not be getting the services they need are able to catch up. Okay, to me, this is the type of question that there's no one up here that's going to disagree on that. So I think it's difficult to try to find something else to mention. I would add to Kevin's point, though, there does need to be more transparency. You shouldn't have to get to the level of FOIA to find any type of data like that. I think if you're a concerned parent, your alarm bell should go off, and you're immediately thinking, what are you hiding?
Candidate Cover.
For me, one of the things about the equity audit is it is published on our community's website, so it's available to everyone who wants to see it. But when I think about equity, it's achieved when we think about all the students receiving the resources they need to be most successful. So I think when we're talking about policies and practices, one of the things that we have strengthened in our district is just maintaining our commitment to policy 710, which is our non-discrimination policy that's set forth at the state and federal level on who is not allowed to be discriminated against. Those are the things that we have in place, and we follow those things as a board. I think from a behavioral perspective, when we think about things like bullying that we hear about, for me, I believe that that's where we build some more core fundamental collaborative skills and things like social and emotional learning. That addresses the whole learner and allows them to understand how to interact with people who may or may not look like them. Those core social and emotional skills are how you develop good teamwork. I think gone are the days in which there's a boss that hands you a task and says, go do this. In the world in which I work, I get a problem and a small team of people come together and we have to solve that problem quickly. Those type of skills are extremely helpful to the future of our students. So social and emotional learning is key here.
Thank you. The next question is, what policies do you believe should be maintained, added, or removed to support gender diverse students? Candidate Pope, we'll begin with you. What policies do you believe should be maintained, added, or removed to support gender diverse students?
So we have the policies in place as required by Title IX and the state of Illinois to support non-discrimination against gender diverse students. Our board actually went through a discussion of this not that long ago, and I apologize, I can't remember the exact month. We had our legal counsel there. They affirmed that our policies were in line with the legal requirements by the state and by the federal government. I don't think we should change those at all. I think we need our teachers, our administrators, need to look at them, and we need to make sure we're following them. Those policies are there to support our students. They're there to support every student in our school. So we just we don't need to change, we don't need to add. We need to follow the policies we have in place and make sure that everyone understands those policies are in place. Thank you.
Candidate Waldesser?
I would agree with Mr. Poe. I think the reason all of this is here is to make sure that there is no discrimination, there is no bullying, because no student in any capacity should have to feel that. I'm happy that we do follow state law and the policies are in place. I think where the difficulty comes in is there needs to be, again, going back to transparency, there needs to be parental involvement when anything of this nature presents itself. I just want to make sure that nothing is hidden, that parents don't find out last minute. If there is a child that is in that situation, we need to make sure it's not something where the only people discussing this are the child and someone that's not their legal guardian. Right. From that point, I think we also mentioned the legal side of this. I think we need to be very careful as well on how much teachers, and again, going back to anyone that's not the child's legal parent, is having discussions around any type of sexuality with children. And as long as we're following state law, that's where we should be. I understand it's a very fine line, and parents deserve the right to know anything that's going on with their child in that realm.
Candidate Comer, what policies do you believe should be maintained, added, or removed to support gender diverse students?
I'm of the mind that we should maintain the policies we currently have in place. I referenced it a little bit earlier. Policy 710 is our non-discrimination policy. We had an in-depth discussion in our June through August 2022 board meetings around this topic. We were advised by our board lawyers that putting ourselves, by violating the Illinois Human Rights Act, we would put our district at legal liability. So I think we should likely maintain those policies. In terms of how they're being implemented at the board level, we don't get into the management portion of the district, we get into the oversight. As the policy currently stands, there's no definition of how teachers and administrators interact with students on this particular topic. We should be made aware of how that may occur, but it's not in the policy itself. So there's got to be a little bit of a difference between board policy and administration and management. So we have an oversight role, but we do not manage the district in that way.
And Candidate McLean.
I anticipated this question, so I went through the policies that were available on the website, and in the equal educational opportunities, we have a very vague description when it comes to this, right? It basically just says that we're not going to discriminate. Most of the conversations at the board level are also very vague. I think when you ask this question, I was at one of the community forums that they started having in January that Mr. Polk talked about, and it was on a different issue, but at the end, there were multiple parents that asked questions about, do you support teachers calling one pronoun to a child differently than they would say in front of their parents? It took the superintendent a very long time to answer that question, and it turned out to be no, they do not support that, but there was a lot of hemming and hawing. Same thing with, are there going to be biological boys permitted in girls' private spaces? Again, they're very vague answers and no definitive response, right? I think that's what parents are looking for, transparency. How are we making these decisions? Knowing, when your kid is at school away from you, how these are being enacted. And I think we just need to have policies that follow the law, but that also we're transparent with parents on what we're doing in the school when they're not around.
Thank you. Well, gentlemen, that was our last question this morning. So we'll begin with your 1-minute closing statements. Candidate Walmesser, we'll start with you.
Again, thank you for having us here, and to all the other candidates as well for running. I've mentioned in other forums that we all love our kids, right? Even if we may have difference of opinions, I think we're all here for the right reasons. That said, none of us have a magic wand that's going to fix learning loss, academic decline, behavioral issues. They're becoming ever more present in our schools. But that said, we should be in a position where parents or teachers don't feel comfortable bringing problems to light without possible retribution. Every parent, student, teacher, and staff member in this community will have my ear when I'm on the board, even if we don't disagree, right? Something that I've heard countless times is that is not the case today. My hope is for D89 to be a sought-out destination as the best place to raise a family for decades to come, and that we don't continue to see our inner communities as an us versus them perspective. I'll always listen, I'll always care, and I'll always put the needs of students above politics and virtue signaling.
Thank you. Candidate Comer?
Yeah, just echoing the thank you. I think this type of forum is just a breath of fresh air. As someone who works in social media, it's sometimes online. The experience in person is very, very different than what you experience online. So thank you so much for having this transparent, honest conversation with the community. Everyone wants what's best for their kids. There's just different ways of going about that. I think that's where we kind of have to think about what is our focus. Mine is a student focus. I believe that public education should make our children good citizens. They should be able to model empathy and understand others, develop kind of those core teamwork and collaborative skills to make them successful in the future, as well as kind of forge their own path in their world, thinking critically about the problems that they face. It may not always look like what we encountered as students, but it is the way forward. And my skills in data analytics are going to be key to making a difference in the district, and I look forward to your vote for me, Jessica McGee, and Scott Pope.
Thank you, candidate McGrady. Your closing statement.
I want to thank everyone who came out here with an open mind to hear what each of us had to say, so you can make your own educated decision on who you're going to support and who is best suited to ensure your children receive a rigorous education focused on the core academics. I brought this up before, but according to the Illinois Report Card, more than half of our kids are not proficient at grade level in math and ELA. Your kids only go through K through 8 once, so if you fall behind or if they don't learn critical thinking skills, it makes it incredibly hard for them to catch up. I take this very seriously. It will be the first priority if I'm on the board to make sure every kid is being pushed harder and hitting their max potential. In order to accomplish this, we need to support our teachers and provide them all the help that they've been asking for. I don't believe public service is something you do for multiple terms. If you're expending all the energy and time it takes to do the job correctly and effectively, one term should be enough. I'm committed to that in the hopes that more parents will choose to run for the board when my term expires with the same level of energy and passion that I have now.
Thank you. Please join me in thanking the candidates for being here. Oh my gosh, stop clapping. I did it again. I'm sorry, candidate Pope.
Yeah, so
I thought I was going to get through one. No.
So thank you everybody for showing up. Being in person does make a difference. We learned that in our schools in the last 2 years also. But one of the biggest, one of the most asked questions I get is, am I running on a slate with candidate Coder and candidate McGee? My name is on the same signs as them, and I don't believe we're a slate. We have diverse viewpoints, except for a couple things. The main things are, we want to address local issues, not national talking points. So every issue that we look at, we need to look at it from Glen Ellyn. Not from Illinois, not from the US, look at it from Glen Ellyn. And Wheaton and Lombard, sorry. And then always asking the question, how does this support or help our student? Every time we look at something, the first question we need to ask is, how does this help our students? And how does it help every one of our students? So thank you for voting on April 4th or before.
Now, please join me. We hope you will take the opportunity to meet individually with the candidates at the meet and greet following this forum. A recording of the forum will be available in HD on the Glen Ellyn League of Women Voters website. Our democracy thrives when all of us are engaged. I can't say that enough. Attending or watching a candidate forum is an excellent way to be empowered to join discussions on local issues and make your voice heard on election day. We hope that each and every one of you will vote and inspire your family and friends and neighbors to do the same on April 4th. Information on how and when to vote can be found on the Glen Ellyn League of Women Voters website. Early voting has begun at the DuPage County Fairgrounds. And now I'd like to turn the microphone over to Erica Nelson.
I'd like to thank Barb Lane as our moderator today.